thanks for sitting down to have a chat with me.
Thanks for coming, and it's a great idea.
That's okay. People from my weird videos will know that I'm Murray, one of the students here on Text and Transmission. So do you want to tell everyone watching who you are and what your role at King's is?
Sure. My name's Daniel Smith. I'm a lecturer in early modern literature. I research the work of John Donne and other authors from the early modern period. I also convene this year the Early Modern Text and Transmission MA, which means that I interview and welcome students and plan some of the teaching for the year. And I also convene one of the modules, which is working with early modern literary texts, which is one of the modules that we do in the first semester. We really start to get to grips with different kinds of theoretical and practical approaches to what do you do? How are you supposed to encounter one of these weird and wonderful texts from the early modern period as a literary item, but also as a book with its own kind of bibliographical life story?
Amazing. I mean,
it is.
Yeah, no, it is.
No.
And it was a really good module to have last semester, because I felt that it gave us a really good grounding in the knowledge about book history that we needed, in knowledge about theory.
Yeah.
And I feel that one aspect of it that we certainly encountered was actually it's less literary than you might expect at first, which is such an important aspect, because I think sometimes it's just being able to take a different perspective on things.
Absolutely. So I think that's something that people often, you go and you do your masters in Renaissance literature, and at first we seem to maybe be holding that back, but you encounter this great critical toolkit, and then you come back to the literature, and you're ready to go. You've got all these new ways of analysing it, bringing different things together, placing them in different kind of contexts than you would have known as an undergraduate. Okay. And I think also because so many people come to a master's from different places, everyone's got different strengths, everyone has different backgrounds, and it's a good way of just kind of making sure everyone's on the same level. We all have a kind of rough sense of critical chronology, right? So it's a nice way of making sure everyone's on the same page.
Yeah. Textual
pun unintended there.
Yeah, I think another jewel of this degree is the BL course, and Dr. Alex Locke, who we'll be talking to later in this series of interviews, can tell us more about that. But I think what we on the Text and Transmission course have realised is how valuable the information that we're given on working with and the BL course. It's really, really important, and like you said, it is a critical toolkit. And from speaking with other students at different universities on different courses here, they've said, "Gosh, we really wish that actually we could do something like that as well."
It's kind of funny in a sense, because there are so many courses, English literature courses in the world, and what you do is you spend your whole life with these books, and these books mean so much to you and change the way you think so much. To actually sit down and think about them as books, and to think about the different ways that they communicate meaning, that they're repositories of technology and ideology, that these are real people who made them and sat down and made them with their hands and invented the machines and the systems and the economic processes by which they get made, bet money on them as publishers, sold them in their bookshops as booksellers. There's an enormous confluence of life experience and contextual knowledge that is inherent in the very pages, in the typography, in the binding, and I think it's wonderful to be able to go into the BL, and you're not just learning this stuff, you're holding the books. You are holding these completely rare, unique books with annotations that really change the course of printing history and publishing history. And I think I might add one more thing to that one of the great things about the BL module, I think, is it gives you a kind of authority to go into a rare books library, which, let's face it, is a terrifying space. Yeah. If you don't know what you're doing, you think, how could I dare order up a rare manuscript or a rare book? Who am I, to go and do that? I certainly had that feeling the first time I went in, and so to feel like you are empowered. This is your space. You are qualified to go in. You have the tools to order this up. You have the knowledge to give a sensible account of this. And you know how to handle them as well on a practical level.
Exactly, and I think for myself and other students in the course, the British Library has just become a second home. Yeah. It's such an amazing space, and it's just, I love being there. But there's a real social aspect to there as well. It's the fact that you're in the reading rooms, but then you come out and you're in the forecourt, or you're sitting, and you will see people, you will see other students from this course, you will see other people, you begin to make connections with other early modernists. And what really surprised me was actually the reading rooms are not as intimidating as you think they are once you're there for a couple of times. You realise that actually everyone there is in the same boat. You're all just really passionate about books, and the staff are really helpful, and the thrill doesn't go away. Every time you order up a book and then it's ready for collection, you go and you collect it.
And you order it, says 70 minutes.
Exactly.
I can't wait for this.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
and it's
amazing thing to
It's just
up.
great. And sometimes it's just, you know, when I was going back home to Newcastle, I had an hour or a couple of hours to kill. I ordered up a 1539 Great Bible of Henry VIII, and I sat with this tome, and I just had the best time and was just flicking through the prologue that Cranmer had written. And I think the best thing for me is actually the marks of ownership from previous owners. You know, so if you've got the likes of Gabriel Harvey just filling those pages with annotations, and I love it.
Thinking. Yeah.
Exactly, and these are devices. The books are devices. They are receptacles of people's thoughts and feelings, and in the same way that we're taught to annotate poetry and text at GCSE and A level, sometimes it's much the same. And you know, there was a really interesting line that I found that someone had written in a Protestant text, and they just wrote to the side, "Transubstantiation is the work of Satan." And it's just great. It's just these little lines and things.
I mean, marginalia is terrific. I mean, it gives you this impression of a direct communication with an early modern mind, kind of unmediated by printers and publishers and editors. Someone has a thought and they have to write it down. Transubstantiation is the work of Satan. I must get this down.
Yeah, exactly.
It's important.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's great. So I've got a question written down here, and that is, who is one of your favourite early modern authors and why?
Okay, well, I guess the obvious answer might be John Donne.
Yeah.
So we have here John Donne's poetry, John Donne's sermons. I've edited some of his poetry. I'm editing his letters at the moment. I've worked on a newly discovered manuscript that was found at Westminster Abbey that we went to see of this bizarre Latin satirical library catalogue. Absolutely wonderful text, incredibly interesting manuscript. But I'm not going to answer John Donne because I think it's a bit too obvious.
Okay.
I'm going to say that as a character from the period, I think Ben Jonson. I find him endlessly interesting. He's this larger than life person. Knows he's amazing. Very, very influential as a poet, as a dramatist, as a literary critic. I mean, he's really there at the forefront of literary criticism. His commonplace books, his conversations with William Drummond of Hawthorne Den, and he's always got a really strong opinion on absolutely everything, and I really like that about him. Very, very kind of major, interesting figure. As a literary writer, probably Philip Sidney.
Okay.
I adore Philip Sidney's writing. I read it for pleasure often. You know, I do have a professional interest in Sidney's, but I think he's the most wonderfully gifted rhetorician in his prose, and just kind of dazzling formal things in his poetry. His sonnet sequence Astrophil and Stella was obviously incredibly influential, set off the sonnet sequence boom. Any individual one of those can entertain you for hours as you pick it apart and think about the brilliant kind of unbelievable mechanics of it. And then I'm gonna give you a third slightly different one as well. Those are two quite big canonical figures. One of the things that is amazing, I think, about this MA is that it really encourages you to put the non-canonical alongside the canonical. And the way I like to think about it is, we give you the tools to go and find a bit of literary history that is your own corner, and then you can explore it. And you know, this is your, you know, you're really uncovering quite new things. And when I was doing my PhD, I came across an Elizabethan woman called Elizabeth Bourne. Unknown, not a common name, but she had a really extraordinary life. She had an abusive husband, and she fought him off in the legal courts. Wow. She really stood up for her rights, and a lot of her letters survive. And they're just really, you know, this is another really strong voice, very different to Ben Jonson's. But the fact that this is lying in the British Library in the manuscripts room, and some 19th century cataloguer has written letters of no importance. right? So it just gets shunted aside, it gets ignored. And we come along and we've got our critical methodology because we're feminist historians on as one of our methods. We're paleographers, we know how to read Renaissance handwriting. And we want to, we're thinking, what are the different ways that we can access more marginalised voices from this period? Here she is, Elizabeth Bourne, she's got her own file. We open it up, we start reading it, and this incredibly moving story comes out. She's a poet, she fights for her legal rights, and her story is completely unknown. So I've just finished writing her Dictionary of National Biography entry. I'm sending that off this week. So at the moment, I'd say this week, she's my favourite author in the period.
And I think it is a lot about that. It's about voicing the voices which are subjugated by history. And we had a discussion in pre-modern dialogues last week, one of the second semester optional modules, and we were talking about the concept of history, and somebody had said something like, history doesn't really exist until it's written down. It only comes into existence, stories and history, once it's written down, it's controlled. And actually we were discussing Bede's Ecclesiastical History of the English People, and we were looking at this true narrative and how it's so biased. And I think actually it's so important to unpick so much of what the canon does and how it sets up a lot of privileges in terms of who it deems as being, worthy or of importance, and who it confines to that little, miscellaneous category of no importance.
Which is where text and transmission comes in.
Yeah.
Because one of the questions you always have to ask is, why do we have what we have?
Yes.
Who has controlled that? Who has filtered that? Who is the archivist, the 17th century person who says, this is worth money, therefore we keep it. This isn't worth money, therefore we throw it away.
Yeah.
Or this relates to royalty, therefore it's important. This person's a commoner, we don't care about them.
Yeah.
Or this person's a man, therefore we keep it. This person's a woman, therefore we don't care.
Exactly.
And I think factoring that in the transmission process, not only is things are copied and produced and made, but as they're transmitted down through history, it is absolutely all part of the meaning process. And you're absolutely right to put your finger on that. That's really one of the key things we think about on this MA, isn't it? Absolutely.
I've also been considering my own application to this MA, and just kind of reflecting on the sort of things I was doing. So I was just beginning in my third year at Newcastle, my undergraduate degree in literature, and I was just I knew that early modern literature is what I wanted to do. If you'd asked me what I wanted to specialise in at the start of my undergraduate degree when I was 18, I would have said mid-20th century American literature, Sylvia Plath, Ken Kesey, that
stuff
sort of
you felt
thing.
confident with.
Yeah, exactly, and stuff that you come with from school. And I think there is a perception that things that are early modern and things that are old are just too difficult, and they are somehow inaccessible. They're distant. There's a disconnect between them and us. But as I came into my second year of university and I was given Spenser's The Fairy Queen and started to read this veil was lifted, and I realised that actually so much of this era is so relevant to today, even in terms of their politics, in terms of religious disputes, in terms of just the day-to-day lives of people that weren't important authors. And so I really knew that I wanted to pursue a master's in this, and then obviously came across this degree. So what advice would you give to potential prospective students here at King's on this degree? What would you say to somebody who is thinking about pursuing a further form of study in this form of literature?
Right. First thing is, what are you interested in? And it's really important that if you're going to do graduate study, it's going to be something that excites you and interests you. And what tends to happen is that someone's maybe done one early modern module or two, and as you say, they've come across Spenser and they've opened it and they've gone, I will never understand this. What is that? Is this even English?
Yeah.
I don't understand how these words are spelled. He seems to be talking about a dragon or something.
Yeah.
And then a little bit of work, and your eye adjusts, and you start realizing that actually this isn't quite so hard. It's hard, but it's challenging, and you can work your way through it. And I think at that point, people start thinking, how might I develop these ideas further? So if you're applying, I would say identify what early modern authors have you encountered? What kind of approaches to them have you used? thinking about them formally or through themes, that kind of thing. And then think, what is my interest in the book? So some people might, for example, want to go into publishing or read books libraries. Some people already know they want to do a PhD, but we don't expect any of that knowledge. But you might think, do I enjoy spending time with books? And the answer is likely to be yes. And so I try and combine those two thoughts really. What is it that I enjoy about the literary text? Not just enjoy. I mean, a lot of it isn't enjoyable. It's tough. You know, it's we need to encounter difficulty and often sort of unpleasant things in these texts. But what is it that has attracted me to these texts? What are the methods that I've had to learn or develop for myself in order to get my head into these very complicated things, like Spencer or Donne also.
Yeah.
I've been reading Donne for 18 years. I often have no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Right? So actually, what kinds of literary patience or what kind of literary skills do I enjoy applying to complex texts? Mm-hmm. And then thinking about, I would do a bit of research into the MA.
Yeah.
Not much, but I think having a sense of how it's structured, mm-hmm. what kinds of modules you might be interested in taking once you got to it. And I would think, if you're putting an application together, you want to show that it's something about the uniqueness of this course that's really attracted you. Because as you've pointed out, it is unique.
Yeah,
and the opportunity to go and handle these things. It's not just kind of cultural tourism, right? Exactly. You go in and you really seriously apply yourself to this stuff. But I think the rewards are rich.
Absolutely. And of course, you know, they need to follow the Instagram page for the degree as well. And
it's text and transmission.
Text and transmission. Yeah, they need to follow the Instagram
regular
page.
Pictures of rare books, manuscripts.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know.
Why wouldn't you be following it?
Me procrastinating when I should be doing research and putting strange videos on, but at the same time, people, yeah, it is. Well, for some, I mean, thank you guys. You know, yeah, that's perfect. And before we finish off, I must ask you, what is one fact about early modern literary culture that you think that everyone should know?
Okay, that's a really good question. I'm going to go back to Ben Jonson. And Ben Jonson is buried in Westminster Abbey in Poets' Corner. Yeah. But he is not buried horizontally. He is buried vertically with his head pointing down at his own request.
Why?
I don't know. Just to be difficult. Just to be difficult.
Just to be odd.
That's Ben Jonson's style, I think.
But that's sort of Ben Jonson all over, though, isn't it? Just to be
obtuse.
Obtuse.
Yeah. Contrary.
Yeah, that sounds like Ben Jonson. I mean, yeah, perfect.
What better reason to read his works?
Exactly.
Buried upside down.
And now everyone that watches this video will know that, and they can go off and spread it, and they can maybe even put it in an essay.
Go and visit him at Westminster Abbey.
Do it, and you can tell the people around you he's buried upside down with his head down.
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you very much for talking to me. Great. Cheers.